Afternoon, everyone. It's just a reminder that if you're joining, if you could go onto mute, that would be great. So we haven't got background noise. We're just waiting, we think, for one of the candidates, unless Gary wants to let us know that he's joined in that group of people joining then. So we'll... Hi,
Yeah,
Gary.
Yeah.
Hi.
Okay.
Good, thanks. Yeah. I don't know if you're able to, if you're on the phone, whether you wanted to change your name, because you appear as Galaxy A21S.
That's
If
my
you
sci-fi
can't,
name.
if you can't, don't worry, and we'll
How
we'll
do I
make
do
a.
that? How do I do that?
I'm not even certain that you can on the phone. I know you can do that on the computer, but it's normally on your. If you can see your image, there's 3 dots at the top of the box, and you would click on that.
It seems to have changed it. Anna, did you do
it? Oh, there you
it?
go. Maybe someone's done it for you. Great.
That's cool.
Oh, was it you, Martin? Did you do it? No?
It's magic. Let's just say that.
So, Anna, do you think everyone is here that has come in through the waiting room? We're 3 minutes past, so I think we ought to probably start. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ellen Loudon. I'm the independent chair of VS6. My day job is Canon Chancellor at Liverpool Cathedral and Director of Social Justice for the Diocese of Liverpool. I'm also Metro Mayoral Advisor for the sector, for our sector. So, and it's really fantastic to have so many of you in the room as we discuss the mayoral elections this year, and we look at how we can work together to with the sector, with our future Metro Mayor. We have a number of the candidates for that election with us today. We have Jane Marsden's here representing, Katie Burgess is here representing Jane Marsden, who's the Conservative candidate. Gary is here, also known as Galaxy 21, whatever it was. So nice to see you, Gary, as well. And Steve Rotherham is also here representing the Labour Party. Sorry, Gary, you're representing the Green Party, as I understand it. Sadly, David Newman has been called away on personal business, and because of the short notice, he was unable to field a representative. So his questions and his answers have been allocated to the rest of the candidates. And I'm sure you'll be able to read the manifesto for the Liberal Democrats into the future. I'm going to hand over now to Sally Yeoman, who is going to chair the hustings this afternoon and take us through our questions and through some of your responses. So thank you very much, welcome, and enjoy the afternoon.
Thanks, Ellen. And welcome again on behalf of VS6 to the hustings. Thank you so much to the candidates or their representatives for joining us today. And it's great to see so many people here from the voluntary community, faith and social enterprise sector across the Liverpool City region. So thank you all for giving up your time. So as Ellen said, my name is Sally Yeoman. I am the Chief Officer at Halton and St Helens VCA, and I'm the Vice Chair of VS6, the Partnership of Infrastructure Organisations in the Liverpool City region. As I've already mentioned, if you could make sure that you're on mute when not talking to reduce background noise, that would really help us out today. And if you're asking a question, obviously for the purposes of that, please do unmute. We're recording the session today. We'll be using it to post on the VS6 website for colleagues that aren't able to attend today. If you don't want to be filmed, please turn off your camera or change your name on Zoom. We're not monitoring the chat today. We're going to use it for posting the questions once people have asked those, but please feel free to post in there if you want to. It's just that we won't be using it for questions because those are already pre-organised. We're using a Zoom timer. There's all kinds of things that could go wrong, including our Zoom timer. The 2021, if you ever thought you'd be hearing that, as Ellen said earlier, the last time we did this, we used a bell in real life. So the timer will sound for everyone when the allocated time is up, and candidates will be able to finish their sentence, and we'll move on to the next response or answer. You'll be able to see the timer. If you want to view the Zoom in gallery mode, you can click on view at the top right hand of your screen and change to gallery mode, and you should be able to see the blue sky timer. So just to briefly run through the agenda for today, there'll be the opportunity for each of the candidates to say a little bit about their manifesto, their party's election promises in terms of the Metro mayoral elections, and then we'll have an hour and 10 minutes of question and answer. The questions, as I've said, have been pre-selected from colleagues across the sector, and many of them are being asked directly by them today. If you are asking a question, it would be really great if you could get ready to unmute and then mute again afterwards. Following the question and answer, there's an opportunity for each of the candidates just to sum up or say any final points in a minute and a half final pitch. And we're due to close by 4 o'clock today, as everyone knows. The past 12 months, as everyone knows, has been challenging, and including for the voluntary community, faith and social enterprise sector. We've seen increased need and demand, new ways of working, the obvious funding challenges, and people's resilience pushed to the edge across the sector. However, it's been a time for innovation, collaboration and solidarity, during which the sector has mobilised to support the most vulnerable, worked closely with the NHS, local authorities and the combined authority to direct services where most needed, organised a huge volunteering response, collaborated with the combined authority to implement the LCR Cares Fund for the sector, and worked tirelessly to ensure that no one is left behind in our communities across the city region. We, as the candidates will know and other colleagues will be aware of, we've developed our sector's manifesto in collaboration with the sector, and it reflects on the events and challenges of the last 12 months, what we think is needed to continue to build a compassionate, caring and successful city region for the future. And it outlines our vision, aims and ambitions for the sector over the next 3 years, including how we want to work with the combined authority to develop a resilient and sustainable sector. The manifesto is a direct product of the engagement that VS6 have carried out with the sector throughout the last few years, including our 2020 Assembly event focused on children and young people, shielded people and carers, mental health, inequalities, sustainable and affordable food, the impact of COVID survey that we undertook, our manifesto consultation events, and of course, local data and insights. The manifesto covers 3 specific themes, each with their own key points, and asks of the combined authority to help shape the sector. These themes include a healthy VCFSE ecosystem that includes investment, collaborative working, and a focus on sustainability. An economy that works for all, growing local economies and opportunities, digital inclusion and the environment. Championing our communities, developing an equal and fair city region, addressing inequalities, food poverty and health outcomes. So we know, and that's why we've been spending quite a lot of time on this, that the Metro Mayor has significant powers, playing a huge role in how the city region will recover and grow following the COVID pandemic, to be a region where everyone can prosper. Our sector is an integral part of the city region, society, the economy and prosperity. And we have over 8,600 voluntary sector groups, over 24,000 full-time employees, and 180,000 volunteers, contributing over 900 million a year to the local economy. So we want to see a focus where people and communities are at the centre of the recovery to create a stronger Liverpool City region. By supporting and working with our sector, we think we can achieve great things for people that call this city region their home. This Hustings event is a great opportunity for our sector to question and understand how our Metro mayoral candidates will work with us to achieve their ambitions for the city region, and for them to hopefully sign up to our manifesto as an indication of their commitment to work closely with us for the next 3 years. So, having seen the manifesto, we'd like to invite each of the candidates to give their opening comments. Again, if everyone could just make sure that they're muted if they're not currently contributing to the discussion, that would be great. And we're going to take them in alphabetical order by party. So I'll ask Katie to unmute on behalf of Jade Marsden and give the a 2-minute opening comments.
Thank you very much, Sally, and indeed to you too, Ellen, for your warm welcome. I very much appreciate the invitation to represent my colleague Jade and to address you all today. I'm apologising in advance for no camera too. Yes, I'd like to give you our Conservative vision for the Liverpool City region is that we want to build on the foundations which we currently have in both Liverpool City itself, but also the wider and, in my opinion at least, currently very neglected areas of that city region. We're facing COVID recovery, and the key to this is always to build a strong economy at the base and sustainable services, jobs, and hence lives for people. We were lucky to come into the pandemic with a very strong national economic position, and as we recover from this locally, we look to recoup that strength and to exceed in this area far more than what we've ever had before. Central government's shown its faith in the Liverpool City region during this pandemic. It's chose it for the survival of pilot programmes right over the board across the pandemic, and indeed for one of the free port positions, just 8 that were there at all. The vision that we have here is not just for our Build Back Better, which my colleagues in Westminster would say, but for us to build back better and beyond. We would take this city region high up where it belongs and to watch it excel. This takes great effort from all sectors, no areas being untouched by the pandemic, but we know the value that the VCFSE sector and indeed each individual organisation within and collectively have such a vital role to play. We've read over your manifesto many times and it is fantastic. I think it's a wonderful vision. Never since wartime have we been united in this country in such a common cause, and it's your sectors that will have been the backbone for these efforts on which that ground floor has been built. I hope they'll work with us in central government and indeed with local governments to lobby for the best deal for the areas that you support and to educate those in power as to the realities that we face.
Okay. Thanks, Katie. I think that was, we just got a little bit of a hint there of the timer, so we can be prepared for that next time that happens. I'm hoping everyone can still hear me. It's unfortunate not to have the best connection on a day when you're chairing a hustings.
We can hear you, Sally.
Okay, that's great. So going to move on to Gary, if we could, in terms of Gary's opening statements.
Okay, so I'm Gary Cargill, and I'm the Green Party candidate for the Liverpool City Region Metro mayoral elections in May. I've obviously read your excellent documents, and firstly, as someone who has their roots deep in the local community, I'd like to acknowledge and thank the entire voluntary sector for your invaluable work year in, year out, and over the past year in particular. It really does show just how special community is to so many of us across the city region. And that figure of 500,000 hours per week of voluntary work is both mind-blowing and humbling. So before we start, I'd like again to just thank you, but also add that the concept of community is central to green thinking. We also recognise Those communities may be local, national, and international. They may be based on need, service, faith, work, or on that simple but special empathy towards our fellow man and with the natural world which we all occupy. So, if elected, the very minimum that you can expect from me is to match the relationship that you have with the present administration. I was born in Liverpool. I was brought up in the city region. I was educated in our schools. I was socialized as a kid in our community centres and youth groups. It is an incredibly special part of our world, and it continues to play an incredibly special part in my life. And now, in the midst of a climate crisis declared in the city region by every single council, like you, I have a calling to create change, to create environmental security, deliver social justice, to inspire economic success in a society where everybody has the opportunities to thrive. I know in my heart that better is possible, but now, more than ever, we need to change how we do things. We need to change how we live. We're the Green Party of people. Now, we believe in protecting the poorest and most vulnerable, and your vision is vital to the vision that we share.
Thanks, Gary. Okay, I'm hoping people can still hear me because I've got lots of stalled cameras, but I'm going to continue and invite Steve to give his 2-minute introductory comments.
I can still hear you. Thanks, Chair. I think everybody on the call knows my personal commitment to the VCFSE sector, and hopefully people will recognise that despite the last 12 months being, as you said, Sally, deeply challenging for everyone in the city region, our voluntary community, faith and social enterprise organisations have truly gone above and beyond for our local communities. And I want to build on the work that I'm already undertaking, and also of the kindness and generosity that has been shown by many organisations and people throughout the pandemic to develop a city region where every community is valued and nurtured, where everyone is able to live to their full potential with the support that they need to flourish, and to ensure that no one is left behind. And I've consistently championed the VCFSE sector and recognise the integral role that it plays and will play if we are to realise the ambitions of becoming the fairest, most socially just and environmentally responsive city region in the country. And I've ensured that the sector has a voice when it comes to making decisions about our future, whether that's through a middle advisor, FASJAB, engaging to help shape our economic recovery plan, or through our social and solidarity economic reference panel. You know, we were the first CA in the country to invest in the sector, to establish things like Kindred, a social investment vehicle that aims to support the growth of the social economy in the city region, which I gave £6.5 million to. And I'm proud that we're the only organisation of its kind to set up a charitable fund even before the first lockdown was announced, launching LCR Cares, our community crowdfunding initiative that raised almost £3 million to support your vital work. And without that extra funding, not only would the most vulnerable have struggled more than they have done, but many third sector organisations themselves would have gone out of business. So if I'm re-elected, I'll deliver the £150 million COVID recovery fund and as much of the VS6 manifesto as it's possible to achieve.
Thanks, Steve. So thanks to all of the candidates then for the introductory comments. I'm going to try my camera again in the hope that it doesn't cause too many connection issues, and we're going to move on to the questions. So I'm going to bring each person in and invite them to ask their question. A colleague from VSNW from VS6 will be copying and pasting the question into the chat box. And then we'll use the timers again for each candidate's answer, and I'll bring in each of the candidates in terms of answering those. So let's move straight on. It'd be great if we could hear from Maxine Ennis, who is the CEO at Rotunda, who would like to unmute and ask their question.
Yeah, thanks, Sally. Right, to the panel. Digital inclusion is becoming a basic necessity, from accessing GP appointments, housing and welfare benefits to ordering food. Even our children's education and homework is now set online, which means thousands of people living in poverty that don't have access to the internet, laptops or mobile phones are marginalised and excluded even more from everyday basic essential living needs. How do we address that?
Okay, so for responses, if we could take Gary first for question 1, that would be great.
Hi, okay, thank you. Now, well, we recognise the benefits of digital connectivity with people working from home now and almost certainly in the future. So, you know, it's good for us environmentally with people not having to travel in their cars to workspaces. And of course, as you mentioned, there are fantastic opportunities for our public services too, like healthcare, where many patients can be triaged by their doctors remotely rather than come in for a physical appointment, and then they can come in for a physical appointment if needed. But the massive benefits in education as well, with interactive opportunities in training and development. However, you're right, it's absolutely crucial that everyone benefits from a new dawn in digital connectivity, so that all families and people can have access to the education and to the training opportunities that are needed, regardless of their economic status. It's not okay for the poorest and the most vulnerable in our communities to be excluded because they live in a house where they don't hold a device that allows them to connect to the world. And so this feeds into one of our visions, which is about the circular economy. If you go to the tip, there's often a skip there that's just full of old devices that people are just chucking away. We want to reinvigorate that as a new future industry where we can have skilled, upskilled workers who can clean devices, make them secure, make them safe, and then repopulate them around you know, our neighborhoods, around our people. I think it's vital that, you know, we live in a society now in the world where we're consuming so much and it just isn't sustainable. We need to start getting back to where we have skilled people who fix things, who repair things, who mend things and make things as good as new. And that is a valued, skilled job, you know, and the training for that is something that we want to invest in. We want to invest in that as something that is a social enterprise. And we'll give all our time, our money and our power to that as a particular project, as well as helping families who really are, they don't have the opportunities, the devices to be able to connect to the world in the way that they should. And so, yeah, let's create a fund for those families as well, to be able to help them, to support them so that they too can share in the bounty, the education, the well-being that is available to us all via the new age of digital connectivity.
Thank you, Gary. We'll move on to Steve.
Yeah, that's that. Okay, so there's 2 parts of this. There's the macro and the micro. I'll start with the sort of more micro stuff around digital inclusion, exclusion. And I think the question was brilliant in regard to all of our lives now are much more dictated, aren't they, by what we're doing now. The very fact that we're having the hustings and it's held in this format. We didn't do that 4 years ago when I was standing as the Metro Mayor, and that's because, of course, the importance of us socially distancing and doing all the things during the pandemic. But even in a post-pandemic world, we're going to see blended learning from kids in schools and university students and people in FE institutions. We're going to see social benefits, sort of welfare and those things that you have to access online becoming more and more prevalent. Even the fact that, you know, many families now have found this, haven't they, whether it's through events where they all join together and have a sing-song, or for some of the elderly people who have found ways in which they can communicate with the grandkids who might happen to live, you know, far away, whatever. So the world has changed. But what hasn't changed is the government's approach to this. And that is that whilst it said it was going to provide devices for those areas, working class, socially deprived areas, it cut the budget by 80%. And it made it very, very difficult for those kids actually to access. And that's why what's just been said about refurbishment of devices, that's already happening. Massively, it's happening. Hundreds if not thousands, weekly of those devices are being given to schools and to young kids and individuals. So we've got an infrastructure and we've got a burgeoning economy there. Also, there's a problem with not just the device, but the cost of connecting online. You know, some families can't afford 13 or 15 quid a month. It's the difference between them eating or actually getting the ability for their kids to do the schoolwork. So we're looking, obviously, along with central government, about ways in which we can support those families. But just on the macro, oh, by the way, on the training, there's something called the Microsoft Academy, which is in Liverpool Community College. So I think Gary should go and have a look at that. That provides the upskilling, reskilling, but also apprenticeships and all sorts of stuff. Wonderful it is. On the macro side of things, we're the first in the country to sign a joint venture, and that will provide us with the ability to create our own superhighway. That will give us ultra fast speeds and the capacity for big data analytics. And the Liverpool City Region, once again, is leading the way in the whole country on digital connectivity.
Thanks, Steve. And we'll move on to Katie.
Thank you very much, everybody. Yes, this is something I've come across more so as well since the pandemic. I'm a loather of technology in all forms, and I don't mind telling you, but it is something that we have all had to embrace in the modern world. I think we need to look at it as a combination. We first need to educate businesses and organisations that not everybody has this access or is capable. There should be absolutely no exclusion to people, and that is first and foremost where anything like this must start. Going forward into helping people to connect, etc. A basic Wi-Fi connection, which Steve has just quoted, in the region of £15 a month. And indeed, I have found much cheaper myself, but you know, they are available. I would like to see a system whereby, like we have with gas and electric companies, especially the big six, who are obliged to provide cheaper utilities to people who are in less favourable financial circumstance. And I do think that this could be achievable. In regards to devices, it's wonderful to hear about the reuse, and indeed I think we can all agree that that is a fantastic programme to pass on what is considered old technology onto others, and I do think that is wonderful. With regards to supply beyond that though, when we take out a mobile phone contract, most of us get a new mobile phone as part of it. These devices are produced cheaply and indeed bought cheaply by companies to supply to the end user, and I think that is something that we could incorporate and see if we can encourage our companies who are providing Wi-Fi to also provide a suitable device as part of that rental. In regards to people being able to use said devices, and I speak as someone in a family of people who are not keen on using, and I often end up doing things for them, I don't think that is a bad thing when people have someone capable of helping, and indeed adds to community and family life, etc. But it would be good to see in our voluntary sector, which of course you all here represent, people who are able to do this and give their time and devote that knowledge to people. Things like we've seen most recently promoted in the last couple of weeks owing to the sad death of the Duke of Edinburgh. We've seen the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme, and I've seen a lot of young people doing wonderful things with older people or people with disability, and this could certainly be something that they would be able to add and assist to as well. So I think we can't just look at it with one way. I think we have to look at that and converse with people to see what do they prefer. Do people want to be online doing this, or do they prefer the older way of being? And can we adapt to that for them? I don't think it's automatically fair to thrust something upon them simply because the rest of the world wants it, for example. So I'd like to think that by working with organisations like yourself, we are able to find several ways forward and give people those choices as well, so that they're not feeling obliged or feeling like they are behind in something simply because they have a different way of achieving what they want to achieve.
Thanks, Katie. So I'll move on to question two. Question two, I'm asking, it's a question that focuses on diversity and inclusion. I think we've got Beverly Williams today with us, who's the Community Regeneration Manager from Steve Biko Housing. If Beverly, do you want to ask your question, Beverly? Feel free.
No, I thought you were going to ask it for me.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to. Sorry, as you'd unmuted, I thought you might want to. So I'm going to, I'll ask Beverly's then. So holding this position in terms of Metro Mayor provides power to enable communities to influence decision making. How will you ensure this structure enables inclusion and access for our more diverse communities in the city? And a secondary question from someone who wanted their name and organisation to remain anonymous, but linked, is how and what do you plan to do in order to holistically support the Black and minority ethnic people and communities in the Liverpool City region? So we'll go first on those questions around diversity and inclusion to Katie.
Thank you, Sally. So yes, this is something which we are now, of course, seeing more and more in our city region as immigration increases and indeed the immigrant populations form their new generations. I think communication is key here. I think we need to engage with those communities. We need to ask and see what their needs are and how that integrates with the life that they live and the life that everybody else is living around them. Nobody should ever feel marginalised. Nobody should ever feel excluded from their community for everything. It is all about inclusivity, but communication, I very much feel, is key. And I think that is what has been lacking along the things. We've seen many things with COVID come forward, people who feel that they're in a different position to other people. Nobody is. We are all suffering this virus and we're all suffering it in the same way and in the same place. So nothing like that should ever be where people are feeling that they are. In regards to communication, I think a lot of that must come from the communities in which they live in. I think governments can only do so much in that. And I think them feeling welcomed into those communities is the starting point very much for these things. I've seen it myself with various areas that I have volunteered for, and I am, of course, representing Jade in this. So I must refer to the fact both Jade and I share a Christian faith. And within our respective churches, because it's not the same ones that we attend, we are seeing growing populations of ethnic minorities, which is wonderful to see that they're coming and joining in, and that's where we join together, is in our faith. So I think as well, finding areas where we have shared interests and shared beliefs, whatever they happen to be, whether that's in the church or in the football ground or on the sporting field, etc., is also where to find that inclusivity and to start those conversations. Again, as I say, I feel governments can only do so much, whether that is local or national. They certainly have their part to play as well. And that part is in listening to what is happening in individual communities, locally and nationally, building that consensus, working with their organisations, whether that is the police, whether that is social care, the NHS, etc., and making sure that everybody is quite literally singing from the same hymn sheet.
Thank you, Katie. Let's go to Steve next, if we can.
Yeah, thanks, Sally. I just want to pick something up that Katie said, and unless I've got this wrong, she said, as immigration increases, well, it's not in the Liverpool City region, not in the country. And in fact, if you have a look at what's happening in Liverpool, the largest immigrant population is Irish, and I think we've all got some Irish in us. So I don't know why that was thrown into the mix, but I just think those things can't go unchallenged. Onto the substantive issues. Look, it's about inclusivity in the Liverpool City region. I want it to be the fairest and most socially just, but I don't think it's right that mayors, just about a middle-aged man, decides on what's best for different segments of the community. So, for instance, what we've done with our race equality programme is handed that over to people who understand what's happening in their own communities better than ever I could. And we've signed our declaration of intent, which was supported by all 6 local authority areas. And what we will do is, as part of that, we will separate some funding from the central pot that specifically targets Black and minority ethnic community businesses, so that we can start to level the playing field, because what's happened so far is that disproportionately that money goes elsewhere. and those areas where there are Indigenous businesses are left further and further behind in those communities. So we want to do something about it. But we're also building a resilience and capacity fund, as the VCFSE sector will know, and that will provide that long-term capacity and resilience in areas to bring things together. But when we talk about diversity, we also have to identify that, for instance, when I first became the Metro Mayor, it was 6 male leaders in 6 local authority areas, a male Metro Mayor, and even the LEP chair was male, and that we needed to do something about that. So I brought in mayoral advisors, the majority of which were women, very strong, powerful, capable women, so that we could start to address some of the diversity in gender. And we've seen subsequently that at least 1, maybe 2, who knows, 3 or more of the new intake may well be from women's representative groups. So that's really good. I've also supported the LGBT plus groups in regard to Pride and Pride across the city region. I think that's given a great platform to explain a lot of the issues. You know, we do think that we're much more accepting, but believe me, if we let our guards down, we've seen the sort of vitriol that can be levelled against people. But look, we're responding to things like Black Lives Matter. We're doing stuff on women. We're doing stuff on disability. We're doing stuff on LGBT plus.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, we'll move on to Gary. Gary, if you're okay. Thank you.
Hi. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, it is absolutely all about opening up those lines of communication. It is about inclusivity. Now, in the Green Party, we believe that we need to invest in our people as much as our democracy, and as much as we need to invest in our economy. You know, our communities are hotbeds of creative ideas and positive action across the board. So, you know, Green councillors are within the Liverpool City region are doing an excellent job in reaching out to communities, to opening up those channels of communication, listening to voters, and yeah, cleaning up neighbourhoods, improving local biodiversity, enabling innovative like compost schemes and so much more. But the real spirit of democracy, we believe, is to genuinely have our people as real players in their politics, active participants and not just passengers. So we would like to set up citizens' assemblies, people's assemblies, so where citizens can come, would be elected, around about 100 people, a cross-section of our society, across demographic, so they can scrutinise the legislation that's on the table, decide what the priorities are for them, for their families, for their communities, for the people that they love, and then bring that consultation back to the legislative chamber where the laws are made. And that consultation comes back with the authority and the weight of the people. So I would suggest a really good way of bringing in that diversity, that inclusivity, will be to create new citizens' assemblies to devolve power to the people, to have our city finances open to public scrutiny and public budgeting. So developers are working for the people, with the people, and then they're not signing, you know, cozy deals behind closed doors, which often results in the loss of precious green space. And that way, we feel that we can create a united city that can make democratic demands on the government, a united city region where we face the crucial decisions that all too often divide people. For instance, how do we deal with the climate crisis? Do we create more roads for car use or establish more bus and cycle lanes? Today, such life-changing decisions are either taken by a tiny handful of people who may owe their jobs to the mayor, or are dodged altogether by politicians trying to hold on to office through our failed first past the post system. So we want to open it up. We'd like to create people's assemblies, citizens' assemblies, 100 people from a broad section of our communities can come together and they can scrutinise the legislation that's on the table and have their say, exercise their political voice, which is a fundamental right if your democracy is healthy.
Thanks, Gary. So just wanted to remind everybody that it's the Metro mayoral elections that we're here for today. Just think it's really important to make that point, given the context that we've got within the city region in some of the boroughs. So really important that we focus in on understanding it's the Metro mayoral elections. Okay, so thank you very much for the responses to that, and such an important issue, one that we've spent quite a bit of time considering from a VS6 perspective, and I'm sure one that we need to do much more work on. I just wanted to move on to question 3. So I'm going to invite Lucy Antel, who's the, I hope I've said that right, Lucy, Regional Food Economy Project Manager for Feedback Northwest, to ask your question.
Thank you, Sally. I hope everyone can hear me okay, and thank you for inviting me to ask a question. The VCFSE sector really did provide the majority of food support during the many lockdowns that we've seen. So how do we ensure that food is given the focus that it deserves as a determinant of both social, health, the environment, and also economic outcomes in our city region, and also that it actually gets a seat at the political table?
Thank you, Lucy. So we'll go directly to Steve for an answer to this one. That would be great. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Lucy. It's an indication, isn't it, of something going badly wrong in the 5th richest economy in the whole world, when there are so many food banks that are necessary. And I deal with people who run food banks all over the city region, and to a man and woman, they tell me that they can't wait until they themselves go out of business, because that will mean that we've fully and properly addressed the fundamental problem that we have in this country, and that is that the poor are left to become even poorer under policies from a central government that has left too many deprived communities behind. And so we're stepping in, and so are the voluntary and community sector and the faith sector. They're stepping in to fill that gap as the state retreats and is pulled back. And of course, what that means is, to individual lives, there's a lot of people who are reliant on a whole host of different ways in which they get food. Food banks is only one, by the way. There's lots and lots of, I've been to some of the kitchens where they actually teach people about preparing and cooking food themselves, and they use food that would have been landfilled if it wasn't for that initiative. But then it's about training people about using those sorts of things. And the whole issue around food and food banks in the Liverpool City region, it is a microcosm of what's happening within the country, which is the economy is unbalanced, and that means that not everybody is given a fair chance to achieve their full potential. So whilst we've supported the voluntary community sector in the Liverpool City region, actually what we need to be doing is to address the problems that we have, and that is of low paid jobs, of unemployment, of course, but low paid jobs. Don't forget, many of those people who are accessing food banks, some people are like nurses and different professions who are just poorly paid, and we need to be addressing that. And I've asked for the government to trial, if they would, a universal basic income in the Liverpool City region, just to pilot it to see whether it works. We couldn't afford, obviously, to roll it out across the whole city region, 1.6 million people. It costs billions of pounds, but we could trial it to see how that works, and maybe that's one way in which we can help. But also, it's about giving people the ladder so that they can go on to achieve their full potential. And that means both in education, but in skills training later on, we need to provide opportunity. And I keep on saying to ministers and secretaries of state all the time that this area, the people are no less talented. What they need is opportunity. And that's what I'll do as the next Metro Mayor, create better opportunity for all.
Thanks, Steve. We'll go to Gary next. So just wanted to be clear, when the bell sounds, the candidate's allowed to finish their sentence. So if anybody's, I just wanted to make that clear. Gary, you'll go next.
Yeah, well, I mean, Steve's absolutely right. The fact that we have got, you know, food banks are becoming an accepted part of our society. It's an absolute scandal. We've got nurses queuing up at food banks to feed their families. It's disgraceful, and it shows that the system isn't working, and it needs to be addressed. And so, you know, this is something that would be a high priority for us, the Green Party. It is a high priority for us, for the Green Party. UBI, we are absolutely backing nationally and in every single election across the country, especially here. We are absolutely backing UBI. It's something that I fully commit to. My entire party are behind this, from its member base right up to its leadership. I believe Keir Starmer doesn't support it, so it's great to hear that Steve is interested. I believe the Tories don't support it at all. For the life of me, I don't understand why. No one can avoid what's going on. So no matter where you are on the ladder, you know, all the issues that we face are interconnected, they're intertwined, and we're all affected by them. We need to realize that when others suffer and struggle, we all do, you know, regardless of your independence, your life is dependent on others. And regardless of your means, you know, your life will be impacted by economic inequality, regardless of your position in life. You know, we are all affected by other human beings' potential not being realized. And if we've got families not being able to feed their children because their pay is poor, we have working deprivation to extraordinary levels in the Liverpool City region. It's astonishing. So UBI is something that we would absolutely push, and we would find the resources to do it. We would work with all of the funding schemes that are on the table, and there are plenty. Also, we have horrific fuel poverty in our Liverpool City region. 13% of our Liverpool City region are sacrificing food for fuel, or vice versa, heating for eating. It's scandalous, and it doesn't have to be this way. So we want to tackle fuel poverty as well, because we know that if we can insulate our homes to the highest possible energy standard, a standard that will stop people burning up to 90% of the fuel that they use, it'll stop them burning the money as well. And that'll give them more financial freedom to spend with the families. It'll give them more financial freedom to spend in our local economy as well. So that is something else that is a high priority for the Green Party moving forwards. The UBI, by the way, you know, it pretty much tackles everything. If we can have one universal payment that takes everyone, all families above the poverty line, then it will support a lot of the work that is done here with V6 as well, and it will support us in so many ways. We can genuinely focus our economy on an economy that allows people to thrive, to use their potential to the absolute maximum. So that's what we would do. That's what we would do. And my door, if elected, would be open, willing to listen to every kind of possible solution that can be brought our way.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you. And we'll go to Katie finally on this question.
Thank you very much, Sally. Yes, there's a few things I'd like to echo from both of my colleagues here that they've said. But first of all, I'm very concerned to think Steve thinks nurses are on a low salary, given that they're on a starting rate of 24,000. I'm blessed to have some very good friends in my social group whom are nurses, and not one of them would claim to be on a low salary. So it's concerning that that's what he thinks, but there is his opinion. In regards to how do we deal with this problem, and again, there is never just one answer to an issue as complex as this. This is the result of multiple issues at the bottom, and they are what we must look to address. Income is indeed one of them, and those on lower incomes will always find that. But helping those people to strive for better incomes, whether that is through education, whether that is through support into employment, etc., has always got to be better. To quote the old Chinese proverb, when you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. When you give him a fishing rod, you feed him for life. And I'd like to see everybody equipped with those fishing rods so that they could be fed for life, as that is. You know, the outcomes that we are seeing for assistance with this are sticking plasters, the use of food banks, help from churches, whatever that happens to be. And again, those efforts, brilliant though they are and wonderful in the short term, are not long-term solutions. And that is what we would look at. I myself am a qualified chef. I've worked in catering just about all of my life to one extent or another. And I think that is something that I notice an awful lot when it comes to food and food poverty, is that people don't know how to cook. They don't know how to cook good, nutritious meals. They don't know how to budget for them, how to plan for it. And it's something I'd like to see in our schools and education of our younger population for that, whether it is from the financial point of view or whether it's from the practical point of view. You know, it is naturally going to be more expensive to feed a family if you're not capable of preparing a meal from scratch, so to speak, than it is if you have the wherewithal to do that from the beginning. I'm not going to go on to fuel poverty as Gary did, because I don't think that's quite relevant in what we're asking here about food. But he did make some very valid points that I would like to acknowledge from that point of view as well. So how do we get it onto the political table? I think it's very much on the political table. I think there's been enough debate and I'm keen to see some action. There will always be issues more locally in certain areas, and it's certainly one that we have in the Liverpool City region. So I would personally, as I say, like to focus on an education point of view. Let's teach children how to cook and how to budget for the next generation. Let's teach the parents who've got them how to do the same. You know, let's teach that the use of food banks is not an everyday occurrence and shouldn't be a part of life. And let's teach them to make better lives for themselves going forward and for the lives that they currently live in at the moment.
Thank you, Katie. We'll move on to question 4. Colleagues, thank you very much for the responses so far. So it's a pleasure to invite Justin Hill, who's the Chief Executive at YMCA St Helens, to ask his question.
Thanks, Sally. My question is, what can the Metro Mayor do to ensure that important initiatives, such as the Fair Employment Charter, are fully considered when city, region, local authorities commission services from the VCFSE providers?
Okay, so we'll go to Gary first on that question. Gary, you're still muted. Sorry. Okay, got you now.
Okay, yeah. To be honest with you, I didn't quite get the question. I don't know if you want to move on, come back to me. That would probably be good. I was trying to write that down, and I'm on my phone, so I don't get the chat box. You with me?
Okay. So would it be helpful? We can. I'll restart the timer, but we'll go with you first, Gary, if that's okay. And Justin, do you want to repeat the question?
Shall I do that?
Please.
Another bite of the cherry for me. What can the Metro Mayor do to ensure that important initiatives such as the Fair Employment Charter are fully considered when city, region, local authorities commission services from VCFSE providers? Thanks, Ali.
Are you happy to go now?
Yeah,
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Yeah, well, I think it's about, it comes back to that thing about opening up our democracy, doesn't it? So that we have an open and healthy consultation. You know, I think in terms of like commissioning services for the VS6, I think if we have that open and healthy consultation where the door is always open to charities to come in and make their demands and to oversee, you know, the legislation and to scrutinize the legislation to make sure that it's fair and that it's being applied properly, you know, across the board, certainly in terms of employment and you know, and everything else. I think that would be my offer. My offer would be that we want to open up our democracy so that you are active players within the decision making. So these are not decisions that are just done behind closed doors. We want all of our budgets to be open to public scrutiny, and we want you to be part of that and to feedback, well, actually, this is going to fail because this, that, and the other. So we want you to be an active part of the planning process as well. And it's really important. I mean, we can't do any of the work that we can if we're going to transition to a fair, just, community-oriented society if we don't have all the change makers in the room, you know, so we can create a portrait of actually what's going on the ground. So yeah, that would be our offer within the Green Party, and we would hope that we'd want to play an active and full part of democracy at a decision-making level as well.
Thanks, Gary. Let's go to Katie for your response.
Thank you, Sally. Yes, I mean, this is something obviously we have been seeing issues with recently in local government. And so it is something that's come very much under the spotlight. I think due diligence is probably the answer here. I think that you need to present the Fair Employment Charter and ensure that it is actually understood by those in all sectors. The Metro Mayor will, of course, be at the top of that, but there are other people who must be taken into consideration in that way. I think any decision on services supplied from anywhere must be by a team. I think you can never give that one decision to one person. I think it must be subject to scrutiny. It must be right out there in the open for the public to see, for them to make their own decisions as well. And I think any decision must be able to be challenged, must be able to be looked at, considered, and must be able to be justified at the other end of it. You know, the Fair Employment Charter, it is there for us to see. We can. I think that is the way forward, really, is that it's got to be open, it's got to be transparent, and it's got to be there right for scrutiny for anybody who wants to call it up. As far as what the Metro Mayor personally could do to ensure, then I think that's about making sure he or she has got the right people to do that for. And I think while the voting public put a lot of those there, they've also got to make sure that that transparency is there for them to see, that when they campaign honestly, and that they say what they're going to do, and that they stick to their word, more importantly. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. And we'll come, Steve, to you, if that's okay, for the final response on this question.
Thanks, Chair. I'm actually not certain that either of the last two answers addresses what the question was, or whether those two people understand what the Fair Employment Charter is all about. It's my Fair Employment Charter. It's taken over 3 years to get to where we currently are. Obviously, with the delay through the pandemic, and we all know that that can be an excuse for everything, but there has been that hiatus. But before that, we were making significant progress anyway. And the idea is to use this to say to people in the Liverpool City region, this is a statement of intent. It's the direction of travel that we want to go to become that fairer, more equal and socially just city region. And it's a fundamental plank of what we need to do to ensure that our economy does work better. And within the Fair Employment Charter, there are 3 standards, and we haven't announced the top one yet because of COVID and the fact that in the real world, despite the fact that I'd love people to all be morally and ethically supportive and do it for the right reasons, actually what we need to do is to demonstrate that their bottom line would be improved by taking part in the Fair Employment Charter. And there's some great companies you'll know who are already signed up to it. Now, the question was about our local authorities and about procurement and commissioning. And part of the issue is that whilst our local authorities would love to sign up to everything to do with this, and I believe in insourcing, by the way, bringing things back, in-house, they are limited by the funding they receive from central government. And our 6 local authorities have had £1 billion slashed from their budgets by a Tory government that has favoured richer areas by giving them the breaks and coming down hard on areas like ours. So yes, they'd love to do it, and I believe that through what we're doing with the Fair Employment Charter and through our inclusive growth, community wealth building, Keynesian economics approach, that we can do much, much more. We can't impose our will on local authorities. So the idea, of course, is to try and use it as a carrot to try to attract people into doing things that comply with the different parts, the 3 different parts of the Fair Employment Charter. But look, we're the first in the whole country to put mental health and well-being as part of a Fair Employment Charter. It's not just about the money, it is about the way an employer treats their employees. And as I say, in the city region, we are going to use our funding, the combined authority funding, and hopefully that will then act as an incentive for others to follow where we lead.
Thanks, Steve. So I hope Justin got the responses there in terms of the question. We'll move on to question 5, which is a focus around investment into the sector and recovery. We've got 2 kind of connected questions here, so an A and a B part to this. So I'm going to invite Carol Johnson-Eyre, who's the CEO of Citizens Advice Wirral, to ask her question first. And then Nicola Daly, who's the CEO of Merseyside Expanding Horizons, is going to follow up with a B question. So if Nicola's ready to kind of come in as Carol finishes, that would be great.
Thanks, Sally. My question is, what will you do to increase public sector spend with community voluntary sector organisations in the Liverpool City region?
Thanks, Carol.
Thanks.
Nicola?
Yeah, so this is Nicola. I want to ask, how will you ensure the sector is fully represented and supported as part of the recovery, and recognise the work and contribution the sector makes to the local economy?
Okay, thanks both. Really important for us all. We're going to go to Katie first, please.
Thank you, Sally. So this sector has been, without a doubt, the most important sector that we have seen during the COVID pandemic. I'm, of course, speaking on behalf of Jade. I'm not the candidate for City Metro Mayor, so I'm speaking on what I believe she would wish to do in this circumstance. When it comes to representation, you do a wonderful job of representing yourselves, and actions very much do speak louder than words. A Conservative region mayor would, of course, feed back to central government what they see and what they need, and I believe would communicate a lot better with central government than has been done in the past so far. That in itself should be more than enough, I think, to ensure that what is needed, the support, be it financial or otherwise, comes from central government, can be allotted to the area and can be used to support the sector. Could I have a repeat of the second part of the question, please?
Nicola, are you happy to do that?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so how will you ensure that the sector is fully represented and supported as part of the recovery, and recognise the work and contribution the sector makes to the local economy?
So again, I'm speaking on behalf of Jade in this capacity. But again, the representation made is fantastic. That would be fed back to central government. You know, they do speak, I'm sure Steve will tell you, he speaks with central government a lot. And any Conservative representative would speak much better with central government than any other representative would. I think the work done must be recognised. There's so much work to be recognised from what you do. And I think that the way that should be recognised and rewarded is with the funding that the sector requires, is with the recognition that comes with helping you to excel and providing the support that you need. And that's the support that you should request. So what you put through, to have a voice to communicate with all areas for you in your as a Metro Mayor, is not only just what is deserved, but clearly what is needed. As regards to the contribution to the local economy, I don't think that can be underestimated. And that is the message that should be put both to central government and to the public too. So from that point of view, I think they should receive promotion, whether via the Metro Mayor, via all the sources that they have. I think that should go sort of countrywide. It's a sector, I appreciate we're concentrating on the city region, but it is a sector that goes right across the country, and recognition nationally is what's needed as well as locally, I feel. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. We'll go to Steve next in response to that question.
Well, you've just heard it from, I know that Kate's not the candidate, but you just heard it from the Tories. And so how funding is distributed is done on party political lines. I'll just surprise you, by the way. There's a thing called the M9, and that's the Metro Mayors group of the 9 Metro Mayors throughout the country. 4 Tory, 5 Labour, including Sadiq Khan. And we speak with one voice. So if the M9 can't persuade government of the merits of the argument, it's really interesting to hear that somehow a Tory rep from the Liverpool City Region is somehow going to be able to persuade government of the merits of the argument. Look, I knew that levelling up funding was a joke because it doesn't level up, but to hear it confirmed is really interesting. I'm sure we'll see some of that in the leaflets subsequently during this election and some of the other literature. Look, the reality is that we do need to better engage that we, and the very fact that in our area, the economy is boosted by the VS6 organisations right the way across the 6 districts. We're talking probably about 50,000 jobs in the wider community, about £3 billion of GVA. So it's a really important sector to us. And we not only want to ensure that as we increase our spending, that some of that goes to the VS6 organisations. And what we have to do is to build capacity within the VS6, as people will know. And that's why I mentioned Kindred before, £6.5 million, which does exactly that. And that allows us then to go and bid for more national pots of funding. But also, I thought it was really interesting on the point that was made about representation. And in my opening, I talked about what we've done so far. The VS6 will know that I think at the early stages of the lockdown, we were meeting every week. I think it was every Monday, and I was meeting with the unions, the VS6 businesses, to try and ensure that we had that concerted one voice at national level. And also I talked about what we've done with this Social and Solidarity Economic Reference Panel, with FASJAB, and of course with the Economic Recovery Plan. And the VS6 have been fundamental in developing our economic response to Brexit, first of all, but also, of course, now to, in a post-pandemic world, to what comes next during recovery. So we will continue to engage, or I will continue to engage if I'm the Metro Mayor.
Thanks, Dave. So we'll go to Gary next in terms of the answer to question 5.
Hi. Yeah, I mean, wow. Can I just say, the idea that Tories only speak to Tories, or the Tories speak better to Tories, or the Tories only listen to Tories and will oblige, is what a damning indictment on how our democracy is supposed to work. I mean, that's shocking. And as Steve mentioned, it doesn't work that way at all. You know, the Green Party will work with all parties of all colour, where we can meet together on common grounds. And here, certainly with this sector, as I said before, if we are going to transition to a fair and just community-focused society, which is based upon people thriving, economically thriving, then we're going to need you, absolutely 100% need you in the room. So, you know, I would say, come with us. I want you to be an active part in the democracy, shaping the future, not only of your own organizations, but of the lives that you touch and that you affect and that you change. I think it's really important that we open up our rooms to you, that you're genuine change makers, voices in the room. And so, you know, my offer to you there is absolutely, you know, come with us. We want an economy that's focused on our people thriving, and, you know, not just growth, but on people thriving. And the way that we're living is currently not sustainable. We know that we're going to have to change the way that we do things. And we know that the contribution that you make brings so much to our economy, in economic terms, in real terms. And so 100% you have our voice, and central government knows that too. So we will make your case with you to central government for the support financially that you need. And can I just say, I absolutely love this this thing, and I'll make a commitment to this as well, you know, to scope out the feasibility of a 1% community levy that is applied to all 1 million plus sector tenders to invest in V6 for the delivery of your role, because you present real social value that is above and beyond that extra 1%. Now, it will need looking at, but let's develop a strong relationship together, because we need to know actually, basically every tender over the 1 million mark is going to cost us 101%. But, you know, like, I fully trust and believe and know that that money will come back tenfold more than that. The value that this sector brings to our economy is massive. The value that it brings to our people is enormous. And the changes that we're going to have to make as we transition to a fairer, greener, cleaner, more just and sustainable future for our families and our communities, you've got my full support, and I will do everything I can to give you the financial resources that you deserve and that you need.
Thanks, Gary. So we're motoring through these questions. Really appreciate everybody sticking to time. I'm going to move to my colleague Andy Churchill, who's the CEO of Network for Europe, to ask his question.
Hi. I want to talk about partnership between the combined authority and the third sector. A lot of us are very conscious that 7 years ago, we lost about 100 million of European funding because the local authority officers weren't able to engage with central government, and central government basically diverted the money. This is just about to happen again, and we'd really like to find out what the candidates think about this. 3rd of March, something that's been ready for the last 2 or 3 years, Shared Prosperity Fund, which is the new European money coming in, but coming in for the UK to be used in the UK, 1.5 billion every year. That was announced, and it's not for the LEPs, it's not for outside private contractors. It's very specifically for the combined authority, for the local authorities and the third sector working together to deliver about change. A lot of money coming in. The response so far has been patchy across the country. Some local authorities have done better than others. Liverpool has been a bit of a disaster, to be perfectly honest. I can look at somewhere nearby, and they've had several meetings with the third sector. They've come out with a 19-page expression of interest form. They've been talking about working together to bring about change locally. Liverpool, we've had a one-pager which asks one question and forgets to say who sent the paper in. We've been trying through VS6 to have meetings, and Sally managed to arrange one last Thursday. It was a positive meeting. There were good people at the meeting, good officials. And they said they do co-production with us. They'd follow up with a set of agreements. And I've heard nothing since the meeting last Thursday. It looks as if we're going to lose on the first stage of the money. What would you like to do to make sure over the next year that we can actually work together to bring resources into our city to bring about change, to work together? Sorry about going on, Sally.
It's okay, thanks, Andy. So the question, just to repeat the question, is how will you work in partnership with the sector
the question
to develop
is
the new opportunities?
We've probably lost the first stage. It's probably too late, but we've now got a year to work together to come up with good partnership actions that will work with the local community and bring resources in. Okay. How do you want to do that with us?
Okay, thanks, Andy. So let's go to Steve first.
Andy, the only thing I'd say is, and I get this quite a lot, that there seems to be a confusion between what a combined authority is and what the local authorities are. And you mentioned Liverpool, that's Liverpool City Council you're talking about, because it goes through local authorities. But what can we do as a combined authority? Well, the idea about a combined authority is sharing best practice. So if there are areas outside of us six, then listen, Sally, I'm hoping my computer's not going to go off because it's come up with a message. So I'll carry on, and if not, I'll rejoin.
Okay.
I'm just getting rid of it. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, so we've still got. So
what we want to do is to use that as a platform, really, to look at how we can work better. Now, on UK Shared Prosperity Fund, UK SPF, it's not only that it hasn't been announced, it's that the government won't let us see the detail of how it's going to be distributed. So what is the methodology for distribution? Because the amount that we will receive will be dependent on what method of distribution is used. And as you know, you can do a simple per capita breakdown of any funding, or you can specifically target, like European social funding was, and structural funding was, and objective 1 and priority 4 and everything else were. So you can do it in that way. And what that does is what we should be doing, and that is to level up the economy. We live in a country that has the most unbalanced economy in the whole of Europe, and we need to do something to address those inequalities. And UK Shared Prosperity Fund could be the ideal solution to do that. So I'd say carry on with the dialogue with the local authorities. Of course, do that. If there's any way you think that as a sort of an intermediary that I can help, I'm more than happy to do that. And Sally and other people on this call will know all of my details. Certainly Ellen will, but they'll know all my details. You can come to me and I'll try and push it forward. The idea for me is to try and get as much of this pot as we possibly can get. But that means that you have to demonstrate delivery. And what we've been able to do so far, working with government, it has to be said, on things like, for instance, the mass rollout of testing across all 6 districts, is that we can work. We do have a network. We have the ability and we have the desire to do these things. So hopefully the government will start to work with us, certainly as the M9, about what we can expect as part of it. And then what you need to do is to have the capacity within the combined authority that can deliver the funding with the projects that we need to get off the ground.
Thanks, Steve. Let's go to Katie next on that question.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you so much as well with your question for the detail that you provided. You know, as Steve says, there is a difference between local city council and the combined region, and I'm desperately sorry to hear the situation you've had. We, of course, have a very big report into the city council and what's going on there, so I'm afraid nothing you've said come as a particular shock to me. But to answer your question direct, I think it is about working with the people within the sector who know the communities that they represent best, who know the organisations that they represent, and more importantly, that know the people that they represent. In my experience, opportunities are not really hard to spot. It's about how do we exploit them for the best of those communities. Now, the resources that you say you want to bring in, which is most laudable, but again, it is those communities who will know what resources they need and how best they can use them. Local government can help. It's about fighting for the funding that's required, and that's very much theirs. But more importantly, it is about listening to all the operators within the VCFSE sector and indeed the end users. And I think, as ever, it is about opening lines of communication. It is about listening. It is about understanding. And I think that is where we really need to look when we come to these questions that you put. I'm sorry to hear that there's been funding lost. It's not a particular case that I'm familiar with, but I will certainly, when we end this call, go and look up the situation that you've raised. And I will speak with Jade, who I would assume is quite well versed on this at the moment. And with permission, we will contact you direct to discuss that a little further, if you don't mind.
Thanks, Katie. Let's move on to Gary. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? Yep. Okay, thank you, Andy. Well, I mean, this sounds really complicated. It sounds like there's been a catastrophic failure in communication here. You know, for you to have lost the first portion of that funding, which I know will be vitally needed and is probably part of your planning process, your budget and everything else. This is terrible, absolutely terrible. Steve says that it's a local authority issue, so that would be Liverpool City. My suggestion to you, Andy, and I'd say it to everyone here, you know what, as your Green Metro Mayor, my door will be open. Let's get you in the room, Andy. Let's talk about the problems that you've got, the issues that you have, and if there's a breakdown in communication with any single one of the boroughs, any single one of the local authorities, you can't get through, come in and see your Green Metro Mayor, because do you know what? I will make sure that you get in that room, and I want all of you to be part of this, of the political process, active participants within the political system. So this kind of failure in communication doesn't happen. Let's get all the change makers in the room. Let's get their ideas in a room as well. So everybody knows that they've got full and true representation. And if you're failing to get through, if your political voice is being lost, if you and funding is being lost, or there's a danger of funding being lost, let's get you in the room and talk about that. You know, I will open my door to you, and I will mediate. I will bring the people that you need to speak to the table, because I'm pretty sure they want to be at the table as well. And so something quite catastrophic has gone wrong, and so that's my gift to you. It's my gift to all of you, because I know that I'm going to need you all. Your inventiveness, your spirit of community, your ingenuity, your understanding of the problems that the coalface. I'm going to need you all. In fact, anyone who's elected is going to need you all, and the people of our Liverpool City region need you all. And so it's right that you are absolutely part of, you know, discussions, that you feel as if that you've got access, and that the communication channels are there and they're open to you. So while it might be a local authority issue, can't get through, and if you're struggling and you feel as if it's falling on deaf ears, then come in, let's have a meeting, let's talk about it, or do it this way, via Zoom in this wonderful age of digital connectivity, and we'll thrash it out. And then maybe we'll be able to explain what the problems are and why this is happening. But you shouldn't be falling on deaf ears. You do too much and you're worth too much. So, you know, none of it should be falling on deaf ears at any point.
Thanks, Gary. Okay, thanks for the responses to those questions. We've got question 7, which it says if we've got time we can take, and I think we're doing okay for time. So I'm going to, if it's okay with John, invite John McCombs, who's the Chair of Trustees at Help Close By, to ask his question.
Good afternoon,
I think,
colleagues.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can hear me. A very simple question to Steve, Katie and Gary. What is the single most significant action you can take to support this sector? What is the single most significant action you can take to support our sector?
Okay, so let's go first to Gary.
Hi, yeah. Oh, listen, thank you so much for the question. I kind of said it, and I kind of said it in lots of ways as well. You're absolutely vital to everything that you know, to our transition. If we're going to have a just and fair transition, a just and fair green recovery, then all of you are absolutely crucial. You're vital to the vision, to our vision. And so the one single thing is to make you an active part of the democracy, the decision-making process. You know, we need your experience, your expertise, and your will, your ambition in the room. And so that, you know, that's my offer, to develop a really strong relationship with you all, so that we can sail this ship through very turbulent economic waters to come, uncharted waters that are to come. We can sail our ship together through those waters, you know, working together, keeping each other abreast of every single little change in wind direction, so that we can bring prosperity back to our communities, to our people, and get them economically moving. Our GVA figures are 75% of the rest of the UK. They're the figures that tell us whether or not our people are economically moving forwards or not. And there are huge pockets, as I'm sure you all know, of our Liverpool City region that we're struggling to get economically moving forwards. We've had growth, but a lot of that growth stacked heavily in the international tourism sector, and the tourism sector hasn't obviously trickled down. The trickle-down economics doesn't work. We want to change, or we'd certainly do, the Green Party, we want to change that to more of a circular economy. And in order to do that, we need all the change makers in the room, and the people who've got the ambition and the will and the drive to see other people who don't have other opportunities succeed. So my offer to you is come and be part of everything that we do. I want you to be an active participant. My door is open and I'll give you political voice. Yeah.
Thanks, Gary. Okay, let's go to Katie next.
Hello, John. Thank you for the question. It's a very simple answer to your very direct question, and that is to make sure that you are not only listened to, but that you are heard. And I think any Metro Mayor in charge of what he's in charge of in working with you needs to do that. If you don't feel listened to and you don't feel heard, then there is no communication. And that is where we would look to make sure that you were both listened to and that you felt like you had been heard. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. And we'll go finally to Steve for an answer to that question.
Thanks, Chair. If there is an individual thing, and I'd like to do 1,000,001 because I'm very impatient to push forward with the foundations and build on those that we've already laid. But I'd say it is about economic growth, and that economic growth has to be inclusive. It has to be fairer. It has to be distributed to all 4 corners or all 6 districts of the Liverpool City region. And we can build economic growth. In fact, we were the fastest growing city region pre-pandemic in the whole country, and we can get back to that. And that has it's had a problem, hasn't it, like everywhere else over the last 12 months with COVID. But when we get back to some sort of normality, then we need to hit the ground running. So to do that, my £150 million COVID recovery fund will be vital to kickstarting the local economy and getting things going again. So there's a whole host of things that we want to do within that fund, but it's about, improving public transport, that London style integrated transport system that we want to see. We want to help young people. So we've got a specific part of that fund that's to give hope to young people that when they leave school, that they can move into something that is in keeping with their ambition. We need to raise aspiration for our kids, first of all, but then to ensure that we have something at the end of that. We want to fight, injustice. So we're developing things like a housing first pilot. I want to see that continue, and that's to try and get homeless people off the streets. And I want to see that continuing. We've got household into work, which is about getting long-term unemployed and certainly intergenerational unemployed families back in and ready for the world of work as we see it. So it will be about taking things forward, and the whole thing about taking things forward is that we can exploit the green industrial revolution. There are going to be jobs created, tens of thousands of jobs, we're told. Well, have a guess what part of the country can reshape itself as Britain's renewable energy coast. It's ourselves. And that the stuff that I've already started to do on digital connectivity will mean that we can have green, clean, predictable, renewable energy, but also ultra fast digital connectivity, which connects us with Nova Scotia and North America, which we can position us to take advantage of the 4th industrial revolution. We could be a very different place if we're given the support from national government to pull ourselves up with our own bootstraps, and that's what I intend to do.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks to everybody that's asked a question and to all the candidates for their answers and contributions. Certainly found it really interesting. We'd now just like to give the candidates a final 90 seconds just to say anything in closing, and I'll do that in reverse order to the opening. So I'm going to go to Steve first, then Gary, and then Katie, in that order, if that's okay. So we'll start with Steve, and as usual, Anna will help us with the timer. So over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Chair. And the first thing is that what I said at the very beginning, I actually mean, and we can achieve, even though it may seem particularly ambitious when we've got all of the sorts of vicissitudes of problems in a post-pandemic world with the aftershocks, of course, in a post-Brexit world with whatever comes out of potential bilateral trade deals. But I'm ready, and we want to exploit all of those opportunities. But just a couple of things that have been said, a few comments, and I don't want to leave them unchallenged. You know, Gary said something about people who owe their jobs to the mayor. Well, I think he's referring to Cala in a sort of surreptitious way. But actually, there are people who owe the jobs to the mayor. 9,000 of them. They're the ones that I've supported in the last 4 years and brought to bear. There are also 5,500 apprenticeships on top of that that I've also delivered, and I've delivered fully on my manifesto commitment last time, and I'll deliver on it this time. And just on Kate's dismissive attitude about nurses who have to access food banks, she doesn't challenge the fact that they have to access food banks, just that they may well be on £24,000. Well, look, 12-hour shifts, I'm working all the hours God sends at different times, bringing up a family, £24,000. When we all stood and clapped them on a Thursday night, it shows you, doesn't it, that it explains why the Tory party are only offering nurses a 1% increase, which is an actual cut in their wages when in-work poverty is on the rise.
Thank you, Steve. Let's go to Gary next then for his 90 seconds closing.
Okay, so thank you. Thank you for, for today's debate. I found it really, really interesting. It's been fascinating. And I want to develop really strong relationships with all of you. You're so important to the work that we need to do. You know, in the midst of a climate crisis that's been declared in our Liverpool City region by every single council, like you, I have a calling to create change. I want to create environmental security. I want to deliver social justice. I want to create economic success in a society where everybody has the opportunity to thrive. I mean, like you, I know in my heart the better is possible, but I believe now more than ever, we need to change how we do things, don't we? We need to change how we live. We need to re-examine who we are, where we have come from, where we are going, and what we need. Because it simply isn't working. This trickle-down economy just isn't working. If you look at our GBA figures, which is 75% of the UK average, compared to the amazing growth that Steve talks about, which is stacked on international tourism, it's quite clear that that isn't working for our people. The environment is in crisis, our economy is in crisis, our local politics is racked with scandal and crisis. We're living through a health crisis, a global pandemic, and nobody, not here, not anywhere, I can truly predict what the outcome will be, the damage that has been wrought upon every sector of our industries. And I fear, as I know we all do, it may be much worse than any of us dare imagine. But like you, we Greens are about creating a just and fair society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. And so my offer is, let's work together. Let's steer our ship through the tempestuous waters that I know we're going to have to go through. But I'll give you political voice. When I speak, it will be your voice.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you. And then finally, let's move to Katie just for some closing comments.
Thank you very much, Sally. I'd like to express my gratitude to you all for the invitation today to represent my colleague, Jade Marsden, who is, of course, your candidate at this event, for your time and commitment in attending and for listening and engaging to us all. On behalf of the party, I hope you do feel that you can engage with us both locally and nationally, that you can express opinions and that you feel you are heard. We made a promise at the last election that we would level up. And while the pandemic has rather disrupted everybody's schedule in various ways, that promise stands. It is about us working together to achieve that, whatever party we are representing. The past is just that. The present is a gift given to us by somebody we don't know, and the future is what we'll make from the contents of that gift box. Let's not be ungracious. Let's make something for this region that we can finally be truly proud of. Our lives are on loan to us, no rentals due, and we owe it to each other to be the best for our neighbour and for each other. The VCFSE sectors lead the way in this regard. You've proven it here today, and this is where, as Metro Mayor, our candidate and our party would concentrate support and consideration for the long-term and sustainable future of you and your sector and of this. It's been a pleasure to accept your questions. I welcome any contact and debate from you all, and I thank you once again. Take good care of yourselves and each other as you clearly have been. Thank you.
Okay, so just to say thanks to everyone again then for their contributions, and particularly to the candidates for being here today. Just in terms of some closing comments from me, I know you've mentioned a number of aspects of the manifesto, but one of the things that we were really keen on today was the opportunity for the candidates to kind of commit to working with us on the delivery of our manifesto. So I don't know whether we want to give just a kind of like, maybe in a Zoom way, we could do like a thumbs up or something, like virtual thumbs up, but whether there's an opportunity to, and I know we can't see Katie, so that's a bit unfortunate, isn't it?
Yes,
but
on behalf
didn't want to kind of reopen the
manifesto.
Okay, so, and if the other candidates wanted to indicate also, that would be great. I know it's found some bits of it have kind of found its way into some of the things that people have said and into some manifestos even, which we are absolutely thrilled about. So that's really great. I really want to thank the candidates for the contributions they've made today and for the idea that they'd sign up to the manifesto. We want to thank the sector across the City Region for their input into the development of the manifesto, and we look forward to working closely with whoever's elected into the role of Metro Mayor on the 6th of May to achieve the vision we've set out. To help with this, we're intending to produce a manifesto delivery plan, again in collaboration with the sector, and that will detail how we'll work with the combined authority and what actions we'll take in order to realise the ambitions that we've set out. Don't forget, the election is on the 6th of May. Remember to vote. Just to say again, a huge thank you to everybody for the questions. I know we had more than we could ask today, and I really appreciate everybody's attendance for the event. Okay. Are we done on the poll, Anna? So I just wanted to thank everybody again for contributing to the event. Really big thank you to the candidates. We know how busy you'll all be in terms of this run up to the election, and it really means a lot to us that you've come to a conversation with the voluntary, community, faith and social enterprise sector. I'm absolutely thrilled that my puppy didn't bark throughout the whole 2 hours, so I think that's a really huge win. And again, just wanted to remind everybody to make sure that you vote, and to say a goodbye and wish you a happy evening.
Thanks, Sally.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Gary, and thanks, Katie.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.
Bye-bye.